Action. Welcome to the Captains and Coaches podcast. I'm your host, Tex McQuilkin, and I am very excited to bring our first ever guest onto the show, Dr. Josiah Igono. He is a leader in the field of performance psychology, the president of All Things Performance, and the founder of Light Years Sports Group. He's also the author of the book, Own the Pieces, The Heartfelt Guide to Mental Performance. This book is very special to me. Every single year I'm coaching lacrosse, I aim to gift a book to the coaching staff following our season. A couple years ago, this book was gift to my team. And we deep dive the book on this episode, as well as we get into the crushing fears and anxiety that athletes face and how they can tackle and take these on one step at a time, piece by piece. We also get into the signs and the pitfalls of perfectionism and the consequences that come towards an athlete and the team fighting to be perfect all the time and how that affects your performance. A lot of the pieces from this book, pun intended, I utilize to aim to teach the athletes that I'm coaching small leadership lessons. I also take some of these lessons and putting them into our training programs. I love to mold and use movement to teach leadership, self-led men. That's the objective for a lot of the training programs and the active coaching that I do. So I do have two training programs that I utilize these small, bite-sized leadership lessons. One is for team captains out there and athletes still in competition mode. Speed, strength, and swagger is the name of the game. So we aim to enhance that performance as well as put them in a position with some awesome leadership tools, understanding character traits that they can bring to their team. We also don't want to leave coaches behind. The Old Bull program that maximizes your time and adjusts to fit your schedule. Because I want you to feel the part, I want you to look the part, and then I want you to lead the part. Be the example for your team. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get to our interview with Dr. Josiah Igono, and let's raise the game together. Welcome to Captains and Coaches podcast. I am excited for our very first guest episode. So I'm joined by Josiah Igono, and we had connected through Eric McMahon. So shout out to Eric from NSCA. So I wanted to welcome you back. We had an awesome conversation our first time around, and you handed off a book called Own the Pieces. And I resonated a lot with this and the voice that it was directed at athletes. And now I want to really pull out these lessons and aim to bring them to this new audience here, and then aim to connect some dots for entry-level leaders. Man, so if you wouldn't mind just leading off the inspiration for this book, a little bit of your history with coaching and now into the teaching and professor realm, I'd love to hand off the show and get us rocking and rolling right away.
Yeah, man. Hey, Tex, man, thanks again for having me. Really excited to be here. Love what you're doing, and I love the lane that you're in, because I think it's much necessary. It's very much needed, and it's necessary. And the inspiration behind the book was just, when I was a college athlete, even a high school athlete, I didn't know what mental performance was. I didn't know what sports psychology was. Like, sports psychology was reading my playbook. You know what I'm saying? The mental skills was reading my playbook, praying the night before and visualizing what I was going to do in the game. And I had no idea what that was, and you fast forward 20 years and a lot of athletes are having that similar experience. And so Own the Pieces was my approach to talking about sport and performance psychology. It's just like you and I having a cup of coffee and we're talking about perfectionism and what confidence is and what multitasking does to your brain and perception, how others view me. And so it was a heartfelt approach. And the term heartfelt is there intentionally because you can teach X's and O's all you want, man, but until you get to somebody's heart, nothing changes. And so that was the inspiration behind the book. And I'm just excited just to talk more about the book, aspects about the book. And then obviously what we're here today to delve into is leadership.
Mm-hmm. So that it resonated with me also with as an athlete, a college athlete, and then stepping into a leadership captain role within my team. I was not a captain in high school, but then just through work ethic, appreciation for the team, it certainly wasn't performance or tasks on the field, but just all the X's and O's between the whistles, doing all the little things right that earned me that. And then I looked for leadership books for athletes. I found nothing. I found Mind Gym. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever remember that book.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'm going to read Mind Gym, and then I'm going to read 360-Degree Leadership by John Maxwell, and I'm going to just try to force these two together, right? A 360-degree leader had to lead up to our head coach and then down to my dudes, my teammates. That was that challenge for me. And I made plenty of mistakes rocking and rolling in that position. And certainly one of the biggest barriers that I felt there was imposter syndrome because
Yeah.
the teammates, they've been playing a hell of a lot longer than I have for lacrosse. And now here I am. I gotta lead that charge. So speak to us about a lot of the barriers that he introduced in part one of Own the Pieces that are self-imposed, whether it's performance or even stepping into a leadership role.
Yeah. I mean, leadership is huge. You mentioned Maxwell, one of the preeminent thought leaders on leadership. And he says something that's very powerful. He said it's leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. John Maxwell. And when you look at Own the Pieces, I hit on a lot of different topics that we see in sport and performance psychology. Focus. All right. I start the book off with focus. Focus is a diluted term that we all use. If you're going to be a leader, you better be focused, man. Like you better be locked in. You better be able to concentrate on a specific task for a certain amount of time. So when you start talking about self-imposed, confidence is a big one, right? What is confidence? It's the level of certainty that I have in someone or something. And that word, the root word is confide, right? You and I, we know every lie we've ever told ourselves. And so if we're not being integrous with ourselves, right, if we're not doing what we say, if we're not finishing every rep, every set, if we're not developing, our confidence is going to get shot. So in the book, I talk about ways to build it, tangible ways to build. I'm actually having an athlete after this podcast come in here to talk about how to build their confidence because they're hurting right now. I talk about perfectionism. Perfectionism, this is a whole podcast. It's actually one of my most requested talks because I think it resonates with so many high performers. And when you start talking about perfectionism, is it bad to strive for perfection? Is it bad? That's a question I ask everybody, right? If you're a leader, is it bad that you're striving for perfection? I posit to you today, I say no, I don't think it's bad, but it's the maladaptive things that happen when things aren't perfect. That's where leaders get into trouble, right? And they basically are destroying their own houses that they're building, so to speak. I talk about the tricky triad: stress, fear, anxiety. If you're a leader, you need to know that those three things are not the same. They are not the same. Stress, fear, and anxiety are not the same things. Um, I talk about multitasking, how that's detrimental to your performance, how to play in the zone. I get kind of fired up when people start talking about flow states these days because to me, man, if you're not going to give Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the late Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi credit, there's an issue. There's a problem because that line of work is so powerful and has influenced me so much. But if you're going to be a leader, how do you get into that flow state? How do you get into that place where you're producing at a high level? You have joy, clarity, and how do you pass that along to those that you serve? Yeah, you're right. In the first part of the book, I talk about different things that affect us as people and more specifically leaders. I talk about perception. Social media is a killer, man, because I'm looking at the grass greener on the other side. I'm looking at the likes, the views, the shares, the comments, and I'm over here just trying to be my best as an athlete, as a leader. And I might not be doing it right because I'm not as popular or as viral as this person over here. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And we can get into it more today, but I believe that there are certain principles that you have to follow, certain principles and laws that you have to follow. And if you follow them, you're going to put yourself on a great path to becoming a great leader. Are leaders born? Are they made? Like, I'll let people determine that. But if you violate certain principles, I guarantee you that your leadership is going to be lacking.
Yes, and that's awesome that we can dive into the principles and that application. And I want to stick with these problems. So coaches they start to become aware of this when they see these behaviors within the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you brought up perfectionism, because this was me to a T, and we could just self-destruct and
Yeah.
treat myself so poorly as a collegiate athlete that I would never treat anybody else, but then internalizing those mistakes. And coaches then had to protect themselves. Like, they didn't want to give feedback of
Mm-hmm.
how I would explosively react. So then how I was able to get out of that, I was captain for 3 years for my team. I started to just focus on others and not the perfection. And that effectively freed up my mind to allow for this. So then let's stick with that maladaptive perfectionism. What are some signs that coaches can look for and then do what they do best, which is shape instead of form and technique, now behavior, to help battle an athlete's perfectionism?
Yeah. So a lot of perfection. I mean, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but people who struggle with perfection, they are unable to accept anything short of perfection as good enough, right? They tell themselves lies. If it's not perfect, it's not good enough. I must do well at all times for others to accept me. you know they tell themselves these lies. There's this discrepancy in performance, right? I thought this was going to happen in a game, but only this happened, so I'm not good enough, right? Perfectionists, they love to keep their world small. They love keeping their world small. I can control these texts. I can control these 2 things, text. But if you give me 20 things, if you give me 30 things, I might lose my mind because it's not perfect. It's out of my control. Perfectionists, they see, you even mentioned it, perfectionists, they see the flaws in themselves and in everybody else, right? Why is that dude wearing a brown shoes with a black belt? Why is that picture 2 centimeters off to the right? Like, they see flaws in everybody and everything else, right? And so when you start to get caught up in when things aren't perfect, that's when you get in trouble. We should always strive for perfection, for perfection. A basketball player should always strive to go 15 for 15 from the line. Quarterback should strive to go 18 for 18 for his passes. A field goal kicker should strive to hit all of his field goals. And when you don't, that's when the maladaptive, we call unhealthy perfectionism, that's when that takes over. Because I'm caught up in being perfect, but I'm also caught up in the bad things that happen, the maladaptive things that happen, neuroticism. I come in one day and I'm great because I was 4 for 4 the night before, but now I went over and now I suck. The team sucks. Don't talk to me until I get a hit. We've all been around that guy, right? So there's like neuroticism that happens, discrepancy in performance. There's the way I want to put it is, you can't, criticism is crucial. What's the word? I'm blanking on the word. They're crushed by criticism. Perfectionists are crushed by criticism. They're crushed by failure, right? If you look at Carol Dweck's work on mindset, epic work, she talks about the anterior cingulate cortex, error detection. And if you look at the area of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, when you look at it with young learners, that area is white hot. You got the little kid and he's writing with his whole hand and he's drawing a picture, you know what I'm saying? Because they're learning. But with a perfectionist, they're like, no, if it's not perfect, no, I'm not growing. No, I'm not. So when you start to see that as signs, as a coach, as a leader, I talk about it in the book in terms of, some of the solutions, if you will, that help people with perfectionism.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, awareness is the first step. And then
Yep.
for coaches that see that, in if they're not aware, then they have behaviors themselves that then reinforce that perfectionism. And that's when they start to lose that kid, or the kid starts to lose themselves,
Yeah.
which is awesome. It's not awesome, but if we're able to get in front of that, especially at the lower levels like the JV, and then put them in a position to succeed,
by recognizing these behaviors of perfectionism. Because it could start at home, it could start at school, but either way, the feed an environment we can control where mistakes are healthy. That's where we want to find these behaviors and then shape them as a coach.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And building on stress, there's different types of stress, and you get into it in the book. So it's stress. That is an evil word for a lot of athletes and a lot of coaches. So speak to it as where we want to stress to progress. How can a coach apply good stress to help these young men and women develop?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you start looking at it from a leadership vein, I'm really big on you have to know your people, right? Personality management. Like that's one of the principles of being a good leader. If you don't know your people, you're not going to know, you know what I'm saying? Like when to bring your queen out, when to use your knight, when to use your rook. You're not going to know. You got to know your people. Or is this person introverted? Is this person extroverted? Is this person more mature than the group? Is this person, a silent assassin? And so when you start talking about stress and the introduction of stress, and you start talking about fear, anxiety, I think it's very important to understand definitions. Stress is how much tension something is under, right? And as you said, it's an evil word, colloquially speaking in sports. It's not an evil word. Any living organism, whether it's a plant, whether it's a puppy, or whether it's a person, must undergo stress in order to grow. Period. Full stop. It's a biological, spiritual, psychological law that you cannot break. If something is not under stress, it can't grow. And so, stress, just the right amount of stress is healthy. It's necessary. It's required. So you as a leader must add stress to your situation. One of the ways that you can healthily add stress is through competition. Competition. Hey guys, we're going to compete, dude. We're competing today. Oh no, we got one-on-ones. We used to love one-on-ones. As I was a defensive back. You want to talk about stress? Oh yeah, that's some good stress right there. Because it's you and the receiver. What are you going to do? You're either going to win or you're going to lose. So stress is just the right amount of stress is healthy. Too much stress can break you or worse. That's not good. Why are you going to put this rookie in that situation when he or she has never been there before? That's on you as a coach. Mm-hmm. You have to understand your personnel here, right? So not enough stress does nothing at all. There's nothing good about helicopter coaching and leading. As a parent, as a leader, as a coach, there's nothing good about that. When you look at fear typically has a physical element. It typically has a physical element. So if somebody busts out, a gun, like, hey man, everybody get down. Guess what? It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be, because that gun can hurt me or worse. If I'm taking a hike, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. If I'm taking a hike and a rattlesnake jumps out, I have every right to be afraid because that thing can hurt me or worse. And so as a leader, we have to delineate fear from anxiety, from stress. And then ultimately anxiety is this feel of unease about an imminent event. And not to play on words here, but what is anxiety? I tell my guys, my athletes, I'm like, it's a fear of a fear that hasn't happened. It hasn't happened yet. Oh, she might say no. Well, dude, you haven't asked her. Oh, the plane might go down. You haven't even bought a ticket yet. Man, we're going to lose again. This team is big, fast, and strong. You haven't even stepped on the field, dude. It's a fear of a fear that hasn't happened yet. It's imagined, whereas fear has a physical object. Anxiety doesn't have one. It's all in here. And so, as a leader, you have to delineate the three, and you need to tell your people, like, all right, are we dealing with fear? Or are we dealing with anxiety? What story are you telling yourself here? The boogeyman's not going to come out and jump out and get you. You're dealing with anxiety, and we have stuff that we can do to help you through that. So that's how I would answer that from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, and it's important for coaches to help shape the high school, the college level athletes and identifying each of these three and defining it, as you said, because then it puts them in a position to realize, okay, we can take this action. Or is it just like your imagination, as you said? So now, assuming that an athlete does not have a coach that has this social emotional awareness, and then they start to project the stress, the fear, the anxiety, the fixed mindset into that athlete? What are some tools that an athlete can aim to apply to now focus on their team, focus on their performance, and then, protect themselves from poor coaches?
Are you talking more specifically about stress, fear, and anxiety? Those three?
Yeah. So a
Okay.
coach that, is pushing their stress, pushing their anxiety, and effectively taking their world out on the team.
Love the question. I give an acronym of BRASS. Think brass knuckles. Brass knuckles. If you want to fight this tricky triad, you want to fight stress, fear, and anxiety, which almost every athlete is going to encounter, pull out the brass knuckles. Brass knuckles were introduced about Greco-Roman times. When you study your history, the gladiators would use them to fight in the arenas. And what it would do, it would concentrate the punching power of the user to disrupt, to destroy, and just to do straight damage to the opponent. And so what we can do is we can put on these proverbial brass knuckles to deal with stress, anxiety, whether it's coming from my opponent, whether it's coming from my coach, my teammates, or even worse, myself. So the first thing that you need to do is, and I love this acronym because it hits on psychological, physiological, and other areas. So the first thing that you do is you breathe. Breathe, diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing is the proverbial accelerator, the brake, right? And the steering wheel. My friend, mentor, and late luminary, Dr. Ken Reviza said it best. He said, if you can control your breathing, you can control your performance, right? If I'm breathing here up, you know what I'm saying, from my sternum up, we all know that that's not good. I'm activating the fight or flight response. And so you have to breathe. You have to diaphragmatically breathe. When you look at the human brain, the feeding pattern of the human brain is from bottom to top, back to front. The frontal lobe receives glucose and oxygen last. Why is that important and why does that matter? Because when it comes to innovation, strategic thinking, game planning, right, creativity, I have to be able to use my frontal lobe during performance, during a stressful situation. And if you're not breathing, you're not flooding your brain with the necessary nutrients that you need to perform in a stressful situation. So the first thing that you do is you breathe. The next thing that you do is you reframe. Reframe. How you frame anything is how you see anything. How you frame anything is how you see anything. You can get the crappiest picture ever and you put it in a great gold leaf looking frame. And guess what? That picture is going to look like $1 million. Conversely, you can take the Mona Lisa and not throwing Walmart under the bus, but go get a crappy frame from Walmart that's falling apart, and you put that big, beautiful picture in that frame, and everybody's going to be like, what the heck is this, dude? Our words are the same way. So if an athlete is feeling that a coach is projecting, a teammate is projecting, an opponent is projecting, they are projecting. What they can do is they say, instead of saying, I can't do this, or this never happens, or this always happens, what you can do is you can say, I can do X when I do Y. I can hit this free throw when I get full extension. I can throw this strike when I'm balanced. I can barrel it up when I do Y. And what you have done now is you've introduced a process-driven statement that solves a problem. The A stands for acknowledge. Acknowledge that there's a problem. Don't try to stuff it. Don't try to run away from it. When you acknowledge, hey, you know what? This umpire's calling a real tight zone today. Okay. You know what? It's pretty hot out here today. Okay, cool. Just by acknowledging a stressor, guess what happens to the stress? It goes down. Just by acknowledging a stressor, it goes down. Call it for what it is. And then the S is to survey. Survey. Science has shown us that when people are stressed out, they go into what we call tunnel vision. And you are looking directly at what's in front of you. You have no idea what your infield is doing behind you, what your outfitters are doing behind you. You don't know where your teammates are. You just go into shell shock, tunnel vision mode. Look to the left, look to the right, look up, look behind you. Your brain has several cortical maps for everything, for throwing, for tying your shoe, for shooting a free throw, for throwing a football. And when you can clarify those maps, especially in a stressful situation, by just surveying, just looking around, taking it all in, going to the playing surface the night before, the day before, hours before, you know what you're doing? You're clarifying those maps. High clarity leads to high performance. And then when you do all those things, when you breathe, when you reframe, when you acknowledge, right? When you survey, guess what? The last S, brass, everything slows down. You are now in control of the game. And I will say this, not to play on words, but people say, oh, the game really got away from them. The game sped up on them. Well, technically, a minute is always a minute, an hour is always an hour. But what happens is now you can impose your will when you want, and you have more control over time. So that is an acronym that I love because it hits so many different variables when it comes to stress, fear, and anxiety.
Yeah, this is awesome. I feel it leads to what I want to get into, which is Hick's law.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a leader, you're stepping up for your team. A lot more responsibilities fall on your plate. Some of them within the scheme of your sport, but also, I mean, you got the coin toss, and then in my experience, the little Division III ball, we had to drive the buses to our practice fields, to the games. So now I got to worry about the van. I got to worry about my head count and all my guys that I'm responsible for. So it's all this stuff that stacks on top that is not the game. So I can see where a lot of leaders, when they do get the responsibility, they could potentially fall into holes if they're not used to it and have that tunnel vision and then not step into this awareness. So speak to us about Hick's law, and then just by aware and understanding this, we can empower the athletes we're working with.
Yeah, Hick's law is very important, especially if you're going to be in a leadership position. Hick's law basically states that the more things I think about, the slower that I react. Period, full stop. It's Cheesecake Factory menu. You know what I'm saying? You bust out that menu and it's like reading a book. The waiter or the waitress comes back. Hey, do you guys know what you want this evening? Hold on, I'm on page 3. Hold on, give me a minute. So anytime you have multiple things, everything that is in the performance environment, whether it's internally or externally, signifies a piece of information. Everything. Every book on my shelf, everything on my desk here is a piece of information. And the more things that I have out and open, my brain is ascribing value to it, and it wants to know what to do with it, to a place where if it's overloaded, I exclude certain things. So if you are a leader, you have to understand what is the most important thing. Greg McKeown has a book called Essentialism. I don't know if you've read it.
No.
Great book. It's a tremendous book. It's called Essentialism. And what has happened, especially with the advent of technology, the Industrial Revolution, we multitask, we have priorities. Well, that was never a word. Priorities was never plural. The word priority originally means the first and prior thing, period. There isn't priority A, B, B1, C, C1, and C2. The priority is the first and prior thing. What is the most important thing right now? Singular. And what we have done in our multitasking metaverse is we have our cell phone, our computer, we have notifications for everything, man. It's ridiculous is what it is. And so as a leader, you have to get real simple. There is beauty in simplicity. What is the first and prior thing? It's this. Well, if you know that it's that, guess what? I can put all my brain power in attacking this problem. And so if you're a leader, you gotta, you gotta really dig into Hick's law because it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of heartache.
Yeah. When you spoke to that in the book, that jumped out. And then, yeah, reflections on, I mean, the stresses that I had as leader and thinking like, I got a game to focus on. Why do I have to worry about this? Why do I have to drive the vans, etc.? So then reframe that as responsibility and a leader versus the inward perfectionist that I had going on, which I was very fortunate with the situation I had in college. I had a first year coach. He was 28 years old when he took over our team. And then as one of the leaders, he dove in and we got to work together. And so we had a very open communication channel between coach and athlete, and we got to learn to be leaders together. So I had an awesome experience with Coach Reynolds. So shout out C-Ray. So I want to speak to now communication channels, because the fortunate opportunity that I had, not a lot of teams have. So you mentioned investing in those 3 channels as an athlete. So I'd love to explore those and how we can empower leaders to open those up if they don't have them.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about more specifically when it comes to focus, right? Like,
Yes.
okay. So in the book, I talk about focus for an athlete. What should you be listening to and not listening to during a game? And I give the analogy of, hey, you ever go over to your friend's house and you go over to his house and it's just one of those things where he's playing PlayStation, he's got the lights on, he's got the washing machine going, he's got the dishwasher going, he's playing, he's on his iPad, he's texting on his phone, he's got the headset playing, against somebody across the country. And it's like, dude, what the heck are we doing? You got all these channels, I call them channels of communication. You got all these channels of communication open. And we already know the research and the literature behind multitasking. It is detrimental to the brain. There's an increase in errors. Like, there's all kinds of things, maladaptive things that happen when you multitask. And so when you're an athlete and you are in a in-game situation, there are only 3 channels of communication that you should be listening to. 3. The first one is your head coach and or your position coach, because some head coaches don't talk to other players during the game. You're talking to your head coach or your position coach. Hey, you're getting plays. Hey, what's the play, coach? All right, we're doing, over G cover 3. Okay, cool. The next line of communication is between you and your teammates. Hey, what are you seeing on that pitch? Yeah, it's pretty filthy, dude. It's sinking, but he's not throwing hard. Okay, cool. Thank you. You and your teammates, right? Hey, what's he running? What's he doing on that route? Is he rising? Is he sitting? What's his footwork like? Nah, he's not that fast, but he's got good feet. Just focus on the belt buckle. You'll be all right. All right, cool. The third line of communication is positive self-talk. For some people, that's prayer. It's saying affirmations. It's just talking to yourself. We saw that all throughout the Olympics, which was pretty cool. We saw a lot of positive self-talk going on. Those are the only 3 channels of communication that you should have on during competition. You don't need to worry about what the pretty girl's doing in section 10. You don't got to worry about her. You don't need to worry about how terrible the umpires are or the referees are. You don't need to be worrying about how hot it is outside. Oh, it's so hot out here. Guess what, buddy? It's hot for everybody. Everyone's hot. You don't need to worry about all these other things that don't matter. What flavor the Gatorade is. Come on, man. You know what I mean? Like, during a game, when you're a leader, not only should you be dialed into those 3 channels, but you should make sure that everybody else is as well.
Yeah. So that leads my next question. And then I love the extra NFL coverage we get. And then I just recall Tom Brady laying in to his teammates and holding them accountable and responsible. Every once in a while, when we see a leader do that on the sideline, you just get the guy looking around, just trying to look every direction other than that coach or captain. So how, in a leadership role as a team captain, how would you go about situating, because the coaches are going to play that best player, how would you go around in game getting them to focus on that next play in priority?
I think you use a great example in Tom, just reiterating, hey guys, hey, kickoff team, get ready, just talking about what's happening in the game. You're never going to go wrong talking about what's happening in the game. Never going to go wrong. Hey guys, hey, get ready on this one. They're stacked right here. They're coming. They're coming right here. A gap, watch out. Like, during the game, one thing that you can do is continually talk about what you guys have seen during film study, what you guys have prepared for during the week of practice, and continue to reiterate that in-game talk, that strategy talk. I mean, NFL Films has done a tremendous job, probably more so than any other sport, in cataloging and historically documenting these conversations, good, bad, or indifferent, on the sideline. And you'll notice that the great ones, man, you got people like Kuechly, Ray Lewis, like they know the plays before they're even happening. Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, these guys are talking about what's happening before it even happens. And when I'm a young player, if I'm a young player and I got a captain talking to me about what's happening, guess what? It's on me if I don't acquiesce and, you know what I'm saying, make the adjustment. It's on me because they're giving me what's going to happen. Peyton Manning was great at it. He was great at it, right? And so I think, to answer your question, that's what you have to do on the sideline. That's what you have to do on the field. That's what you have to do at halftime and before the game, is you continually have those conversations about what's happening in game.
Yeah, I like that answer. So then it also puts us in a position, and this is one of the challenges as a coach at the high school level, is getting seniors to listen to freshmen. Freshmen more often than not listen to those seniors, but now if we got a dude who's starting, getting playing time, and he's a freshman, if he sees something, we need the older guys to listen. So if it is focusing in the game on the priority of the next play, or where the opposition is moving, then I see the bridge staying open versus a hands up mentality. Like, what are you doing? Or talking down to them. So it's
Yeah.
shaping and aiming, and that can certainly be developed in practice, which is going to be key, because then again, we practice like we play. I truly believe that. So then helping shape that opportunity for each level of third string, second string, first string, freshman to senior, communicating to one another so we can focus come game time.
Yeah. I want to say something to that real quick, because you said, hey, what if you have a freshman and a senior, right? Just because this freshman is starting and he's a stud, you know what I'm saying, or she's a stud, doesn't mean that their leadership can't be developed. So when I start talking about like the principles, one of my foremost principles of leadership is that there has to be personal development. Like, if you're not committed to getting better, you shouldn't be a leader. That's just my opinion. People can disagree or whatever, but if you're the same player, and I tell guys this all the time, and sometimes they look at me like a deer in headlights. If you're the same guy right now as you were 2 years ago, you're stealing money and you're wasting time. You should be getting better. I want leaders who are continually investing in themselves. I want to follow that guy because I know that he's growing and he's not just sitting on his laurels telling me stories of what I used to play. No, he's actually getting better. So that freshman is going to be listened to a lot quicker if that freshman is showing everybody else, like, no, dude, I'm in the film room. No, dude, I do play. I'm putting extra work in the weight room. I'm doing XYZ 1, 2, 3 ABC as it relates to my personal development and me as a player and as a leader. And I think that when people see that, they follow. And people are naturally drawn toward disciplined people. And if that individual, whether you're a freshman or otherwise, is doing that, their leadership is that much more seamless. So I just wanted to say that because I know that that's a thing. That's really a thing, you know?
Yeah, and then those actions, they do speak louder than words, and then they will see that they're taking those steps. Even though they may not listen to the voice yet, you got to earn that respect. They'll see the effort and the attitude put forth.
Yeah.
Let's continue down the line for the principles. Personal development. If that's number one, where do we go from there?
So I think another one is professional lines. You gotta draw lines. You gotta draw professional lines. I have seen so many players and coaches get muddy with lines, right? To a place where it has destroyed their career. What do boundaries do? People think that, boundaries, they're so constricted. No. If you look at a fence, if you look at a boundary, if you look at even within the game of baseball or football or lacrosse, whatever, basketball, whatever court or surface that you play on, the boundary keeps the bad stuff out and it keeps the good stuff in. That's what boundaries do. Boundaries actually allow you to fly higher. And if you don't have professional lines within how you communicate, if you're a leader, like how you communicate with everybody else, if you're a coach, how you communicate with players. I've seen players, man, you know, uh, doing questionable stuff with coaches. And then the coach comes in during game week and tries to correct and blow the player up. And the player's like, man, dude, get out of here. I know what you do on the weekends, bro, because I was with you. I was with you. And that player and that coach, rather, their credibility is shot. So you have to, if you're a leader, you're not better than anybody else. You just got to be different because the bar is different. So you have to have professional lines. I think that's another one. Another area is just dealing with conflict. If you're going to be a leader, you better develop a tool bag for dealing with conflict. Because if you don't like conflict, if you don't like dealing with conflict and drama, you should not be a leader. As a leader, you are the first line of defense. As a captain, you are the first line of defense. And if you're not going to defend the flock, the herd against conflict, you shouldn't lead. You shouldn't lead. Period. Full stop. So you got to be able to do that. Another thing I say is you got to be the product. Be the product. Use the product. You're a strength coach and you're putting out your workouts. Do the workouts. To this day, man, every time I create a workout, whether it's for my son or other people, like I actually do it. Yeah. When I was working in professional baseball, shout out to Napoleon Pichardo. Like when he put together the programs, I was doing the programs because I want to feel what the players are feeling. So that if they say, oh, well, I can say, you know what, do this instead of that. Yeah. Do this instead of this. Do 5 of these instead of 3 of these, or vice versa. So you have to be the product. If I'm listening to you and you're talking to me about whatever subject, I can tell within seconds if you're passionate about what you're talking about or if you know what you're talking about. And so you got to be the product. You got to be the product. Another one is integrity. Tony Dungy said it the best. What does integrity mean? It's an integrated whole. It's something that is unified. There's no separation, right? Some people would even argue that, I have my personal life, I have my professional life. And, and some people would even argue like, no, dude, you have your life. It's all integrated. It's whole. That's actually what the word holy means. If you look at the word holy, like, oh, this person's holy. No, it's not some religious, like, it means that person is integrated. That's what it means. I'm the same at home as I am with my teammates, as I am at work, as I am in the marketplace. Tony Dungy said it the best. He said that there are no levels to integrity. There's no levels to it. You either have it or you don't. Are you integrous or are you not? So I think when you come to principles, that's huge. You said something earlier that was profound, and it's one of my principles as well. It's servant leadership. Servant leadership. What is servant leadership? You are literally using your gifts, talents, and abilities to improve the lives and the productivity of others. You're putting others before yourself. You're using your gifts, talents, and abilities to serve. You're serving what you have. You're putting it on a platter for other people to enjoy. Orange trees don't eat themselves. Other people do. Apple trees don't eat themselves. Other people do. The fruit is for the people. I'm reminded of a famous story of rabbi. A rabbi had, 12 followers, old story. And they were arguing, hey, who's the greatest? Who's going to be the greatest of them all? A rabbi didn't even get mad. He told them how to be the greatest. He said, you want to be the greatest? Be the servant of all. Wait, what? Yeah, dude. Yeah. And you notice that the best players, the best captains, the best coaches, they are using all of their might to empower their people. Those are the ones that we remember. And so those are some of the things that to me are pillars. You have to be somebody who's leaving a legacy, right? Legacy is huge, right? The greatest investment and the greatest legacy that you will ever leave is not in a building. It's in people. There's a reason why Coach Wooden is still being talked about to this day.
Yeah, he's great.
Come on, dude. There's still a reason why the Bill Walsh coaching tree still is winning Super Bowls to this day. And he's no longer with us. The greatest legacy is not in buildings. It's in people. So if you're committed to discipleship, to multiplication, you know what I'm saying? You're going to do well as it relates to leadership. So those are just some of them. There are other areas that I love, but those are just some of them right there.
Yeah. And I mean, pillars is one of the best ways that I feel we can describe this, because then it's very visual, right? We're putting up these pillars, and this is how we can teach high schoolers to really get the picture, since they don't have a lot of life experience to reference. So if we're presenting these pillars, and then if they have behaviors that reinforce those pillars, call it out. Teamwork, I call it when I see it. So then that way we're teaching these pillars, these principles, as the behaviors are introduced with the team. And also, if their behaviors are not in line with those pillars and principles, we can reference back to them. But if we don't introduce these, they don't have a visual of what an awesome leader is. They don't have a visual of what a champion mindset and attitude and team and culture is. So it's awesome to have those, and then stand up those values, those principles, those pillars at the beginning. But as you said, from a coach's perspective, if you're not living this is where you lose the team. And that's something we see far too often.
Yep.
Well, cool, man. I want to take some time and reflect back, because you've accomplished a lot as a coach and an educator. And it started somewhere where you were investing in your abilities. I want to focus on those leadership lessons that you had as an athlete. So were there any assumptions, right? When you stepped into a starting role or a leadership role, did you assume that people would listen? Was there any moment where you realized there's a performance gap for your ability to empower and lead others? And how did you close that gap? Or was there an issue or a challenge or a story to help you learn a lesson that you still apply to your professional coaching and family life?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think as I think about that, there was one instance that happened when I was a young coach, and I was coaching at Grand Canyon University. At the time, we were Division II, and I was part of that staff that helped us to get to D1, along with Chuck Howard, our director of performance, Udemy Udofia, and Steve Mormon, and others. And I remember I was a young coach, young strength coach, and uh, there was a GA when I was playing football at Arizona State. There was a GA at the time. His name was Mark Uyama, and we call him Uwe. And Uwe was the head strength coach for the San Francisco 49ers. And I lined it up so I had a professional development tour out there. And so I went there for like 2 years. And this is when they were like, man, they had Harbaugh, Colin Kaepernick, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, like they were stacked. This is their Super Bowl run. You know what I'm saying? That during that time. And as a young strength coach, I said, hey, Uwe, man, I want you to check out my program, right? Because every young coach, we all have programs. Oh, I got something for you, buddy. Oh, I got a program for you. I'm gonna get you big. I'm gonna get you fast, buddy. Right? And I remember going out there, and I was so proud. I have my program ready. And I'm like, hey, Uwe, man, what do you think about this program? Huh? And he starts looking at it, and he's like, why would you do that? Why would you train in the glycolytic state here? Why would you do that? Did you know that they're going to get hurt if you keep doing this? And just ripping my program up, dude. Like I'm sitting there, and after he had finished, I felt like I was about 2 inches tall, man. And my ears, I remember, I'll never forget it. My ears were burning. Like my head felt like it was about to explode. Cause I was just like, yo, man, I love the profession. I love this stuff. But at this moment, I don't feel like I know jack. Like I thought that this was it. I thought this was the pro, and I was getting results. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, dude, I suck, man. This is my mentor. This is my friend telling me that, dude, you need to change this, bro. And I remember, I'll never forget it. I was in Palo Alto, California, just after practice. And I remember I had this crossroads. I was just like, dude, do I want to keep doing this? Or am I going to make the necessary changes to get better? And I just remember I was nauseous, man. My head was spinning because I had never been told the truth like this before. And I said, you know what, man, forget this, dude. I'm going to go 10 toes down and I'm going to make the changes. And I did, man. I made those changes. And it was crazy because we started seeing exponential results, not only with the teams that I was working with, there were other coaches that were using my programs that I had now revamped, and they were having success in their programs. We ended up winning the Learfield Cup, which is for the highest Division II athletic program in the country. We won that 2 years in a row. And I was blessed to be able to see our athletes thrive. And I don't take credit for their success, but I would say that, man, I am so glad that I was able to make those changes, because those changes help me help my athletes and serve them better. And when you ask me that question, there's so many things that we talked about today, even, right? That checks those boxes: the servant leadership, the dealing with confidence, dealing with conflict, right? Dealing with conflict. What are you going to do? Right? Being the product, professional lines, personal and professional development. I had to eat it and become aware, like you said, to become aware that this thing even existed. And man, that was one of the most impactful lessons that I've learned. And I just learned that, man, when you humble yourself and you listen and you take to wisdom, and you start to look at all these areas for what they are, man, it just yields so much fruit. So that to me is like one of the most impactful things that's ever happened to me as a young leader, a young coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel from a strength coach's perspective, we all have that moment where we get ripped apart on our program. We think we found the perfect warm up, the perfect strength program. And then somebody who, I imagine they all had their moment where somebody just ripped it all apart. So it's awesome you had that early, and then had the resilience as a coach and leader to then, okay, I choose to listen, which is huge. That a big part of the mission of this podcast is that self-awareness. So then tapping into the leaders and experienced coaches like yourself, so that a light bulb can go off. A reference for whoever is listening can then now, okay, there is something I don't know. And
Yeah.
then that Dunning-Kruger effect for all us young coaches
Yeah.
or young athletes out there, where I love the swagger that you take into the confidence in the field. At the same time, we still need to be a humble professional and listen to leaders like yourself.
Yeah.
I do want to highlight, I listened to a couple of your interviews to prepare for this, and there was a one-liner that I wrote down that you had from your 2019 Rangers season with the baseball team. And I feel this in line with self-awareness. It jumps out to me. Know yourself, know others, improve yourself, impact others. So I'd love to close down this episode with just the coach's room or your mindset, helping to craft that message, and then most importantly, install it with the team so they can embody it versus just put it off as another coach speak, another coach phrase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you said it. Know yourself, right? Know yourself, know others. Self-awareness is so huge. You know, it's so huge. Many people don't even know that they have a problem or they have an issue. And until they understand that there are serious blind spots, you stay in the same place. I tell guys all the time, I'm like, dude, you don't know that your taillight's busted until somebody else tells you. Like, you don't know that your taillight's busted. Somebody has to bring awareness to you. And at that point, you can say, oh, dude, my taillight's not busted. Get out of here. Okay. And then you go along, and now the cop has to tell you when he pulls you over. Right. So you have to be aware and seeking feedback and seeking for opportunities to get better. And you only do that through humility. You can only do that through humility. A king can't crown himself. People that do the whole crown thing all the time. I'm like, dude, a king, if you study kingdoms and kings and queens, a king doesn't crown himself. The people crown the king. The people crown you. That's how it works. So you have to understand yourself. I'm huge on personal development. Huge. If you're not getting better, you're stealing money and you're wasting time. You have to know others. You got to take the time to really get to know people. Everybody's favorite topic is themselves. When I sit and talk to players, they're like, "Oh, Joe, man, thanks so much, man. That was awesome. That was an awesome session." And I didn't even really say anything. I'm like, I didn't even say anything. All I did was listen. One of my mentors told me a long time ago, he said that a listening ear has a healing quality. People just want to be heard, man. And if you provide that pathway, you are on your way to being a great leader because you're going to start to understand and know your people. And then I said, improve yourself. So now that you know yourself, now, as with this story, now I can go and improve. I can go and get better. I can be the fullest and best version of myself. There's a word that we use a lot in coach speak, and it's called potential. Potential is a curse word when used without, you know what I'm saying, without restriction. It's a curse word. It's a curse word. Stop telling that player that he has potential for you've been telling me he has potential for the last 5 years. Once you've accomplished it, it's no longer potential. You know, potential is untapped power. That's all it is. Your vehicle probably has the potential to go 150 miles an hour, but there's a governor on it that says, no, you're not going to go 150. You have the potential of going 150, but you're only going to go about 100 if we're really being honest with ourselves. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to extract and to develop potential, untapped power. Jimmy Johnson, famous football coach for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't coach players to where they are. I coach them to where they could be. That's how I coach them.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And so you have to really dig down, do the work of improving yourself. And then when you do that, guess what? The marketplace gets the best version of Tex. The marketplace gets the best version of Josiah. And now I can have impact. Because when I speak now, I have gravitas. I'm not just on my couch writing programs. No, I am the product. No, I have humbly put myself and submitted myself to others who can speak to me. No, I am integrous. I am integrated. No, I do truly listen and I truly care. No, I'm not afraid of conflict. I have social emotional intelligence. I am putting in the work. I have drawn professional lines. And when you do that, you're going to have so much impact as a leader. It's going to be laughable. People are just going to come to you and be magnetized to you because of that alone, because it doesn't exist in mass in the marketplace. And so that's what I would say to that saying. It just encompasses pretty much everything that we talked about today regarding leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome and excellent direction for young leaders is not make it about you. Just because you have the C on your chest, now you got to look outward for your teammate and truly get to know them, no matter the depth chart, no matter the class, and then that will effectively lead to the relationship, and they'll listen when you need them to the most come
Absolutely.
competition time. Well, dude, this was awesome. Again, I'm so grateful for you and then how you were able to articulate and share your message and own the pieces. So to our listeners, I'll throw a link to the book, Amazon, in the show notes. And then this is each season I coach lacrosse. I end it with a gift to my coaching staff. And so the 2023 season, this book was the gift to those coaches, man. So I hope to continue to dive into your work, get to know you, and I know you're doing awesome things, and you will continue to grow. So it sounds like you got an awesome opportunity with, would you say, 800 athletes now?
Yeah, about 800 athletes. Yeah.
That's awesome. And a final piece: if people want to learn more about you, follow your pathway, your cause, your fight, and everything that you're putting out to the world, where should they go?
Yeah, so online, you can find me on all the major social media platforms. I'm not on TikTok yet, and I don't know if I will, but I'm on LinkedIn, Josiah Igono. I'm on Instagram, Josiah Igono. On Twitter with the same. I also have a business, All Things Performance. You can follow me on that channel, and I have a nonprofit that I just started last year to help even more people, more young athletes, specifically collegiate and high school and youth athletes, called Lightyear Sports Group. And so I'll be looking for content coming from Lightyear Sports Group. The reason why it's called Light Years is because one common saying that I hear from a lot of seasoned vets and professional athletes and older athletes is, man, if I knew then what I know now, I'd be light years ahead. I hear that all the time. And so that's the name of our nonprofit. And so just be looking out for that. And so, man, I appreciate you, Tex. This is awesome. And I think this is a much needed lane to be in with coaches these days and leaders.
Well, you're welcome back anytime. And yeah, hope to dive into your mentorship, your leadership, and I appreciate all the work you're doing too, buddy.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.